Thank you for joining us for segment 3 of our virtual open house for the Safe Clearwater project. If you're joining us right now, we're going to be reviewing the intersections and projects at Johnson Street, Huntington, and Highway 395. My name is Holly Logan, and I'm the Public Involvement Coordinator for this effort. Also joining me today is Lisa Schauer from McKay Esposito, Ryan Durham from the City of Kennewick, Brent Turley from the Transpo Group, and John Pascal from the Transpo Group. We will be recording this presentation today, so it will be available on our project website after this webinar at safeclearwateravenue.com. And we will be holding any questions until the end of the presentation, at which time you can enter questions via the chat function on the bottom of your menu. As the open house comes to a close, you will be prompted via email to complete a survey, and we encourage you to complete this as your feedback is of value to this study. I will turn it over to Ryan Durham, who will provide some background on the project and where we are at currently.
All right. Back in 2012, the city saw that there was an opportunity to apply for a safety grant that would help with some of the improvements along Clearwater. And we received the grant. We were awarded the grant for $2.12 million. And so what this project will do is it will take the information, we'll take information that we received in the last 6 years of traffic-related accidents, pedestrian and vehicle, and we're going to analyze and see where some of those problem areas are with that information. And so the idea is that we are going to try to come up with a access management plan that will help fix some of those problems along the corridor to make it safer for most of our motorists that travel through the corridor and all our stakeholders. So the plan also too is to address some of the pedestrian needs for safety and also for future development. So the idea and the project purpose is to identify immediate and long-term projects to improve safety for all users along the corridor. That's our statement, and that's the project team statement and also the city statement for making the corridor a safer place to drive now and into the future. Next slide. So where are we at now? We're in the phase 1. So that's right now we're going through the safety study, and the city has gone through a hiring process to hire Transpo Group and McKay Esposito. Transpo Group is the lead agency to handle the safety study and analysis and also develop the access management plan. McKay Esposito is handling the public involvement side of things, and they've been in contact with you already regarding this project. So then we're trying to get this access management plan developed so then council will be able to have an opportunity to review it and then adopt it by about middle of June timeframe. Once that has been adopted by council, then we'll proceed into phase 2, which is design and right-of-way acquisitions, and that will probably take probably about 6 months to a year to develop the design and right-of-way. Also, then once the design and right-of-way is completed, right-of-way is in hand, then we can proceed into construction. And construction will basically be the highest starting with the highest priority needs, and that meaning that we'll look at how much can we do with the allotted construction money that we are given. And that amount is about $1.2 million. So we're going to try to fix as much as we can with that money. So go ahead, next slide, please. So where are we at now in the process? we started back in June, so we're about 9 months in the first phase, and we've gone through already 3 open houses, and this being the last of the 3. And we've gone through 2 council workshops, and we have a final council workshop in April. And then after that council workshop, then we probably in June the opportunity for council adopt the access management plan to proceed with phase 2. And so for now, that's kind of a project update and background. I'll turn it over to John Pascal, who's the project lead for Transpo Group.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. So before we begin discussing and sharing with you the final concepts, wanted to provide everyone the background and context for how we got to where we are today in terms of developing the improvements. Quick overview again and reminder that the study area is the entire corridor, which is approximately 5.5 miles long. However, we did focus in on where the data essentially led us, and a lot of the collision history and issues that are experienced today are found mostly on the eastern end of the corridor from Columbia Center Boulevard all the way to US 395, and that happens to be where most of the activity is from a commercial standpoint. What we did was we looked at a variety of different information and evaluated it and we evaluated it very closely, and we started out with a safety data. Since this is the primary reason why we are looking at improvements to the corridor, we wanted to have a really good understanding of what was occurring, where a predominant number of accidents were occurring, what types of accidents they were, and look into some of the issues that might be causing them. And that then would help us find ways in which we could address those collisions. There are, over the last 6 years, there's been over 900 collisions along the corridor, many of them rear end collisions and or right angle and approach turns, and those are collisions that are vehicles entering or exiting driveways onto the corridor or off the corridor. We also looked at traffic volumes along the corridor, the characteristics of the traffic throughout the day. I think it's not a surprise, but a lot of the heavier traffic movements are towards the eastern end, and traffic and lesser volumes are experienced along the western end of the corridor. Can you go back to this? Yeah, sorry. We also looked at the operations of the major intersections, looking at average vehicle delay and trying to really understand when and where congestion was occurring, so that as we evaluated safety improvements, that we're also mindful of areas where we could improve operations, because both go hand in hand. We also surveyed the entire corridor, looking at each of the driveways along the corridor. The things that we were looking at were how the driveways are currently designed, whether they met existing design standards. We looked at how close they were to major intersections, recognizing that as there's more driveways, the closer a driveway is to an intersection, the more opportunity there could be for issues to arise. That's because there's so much going on at an intersection. We also looked at site distance issues and site obstructions from signage or other things, utility poles. We looked at the crash history of each of the driveways, and then we looked at opportunities for driveway consolidation and cross-access easements. Ultimately, that information was used to rank driveways in priority. Public involvement from day one has been an important component of this process. We started out in June, July, walking the corridor, meeting with business owners and property owners and residents. Over 30,000 steps taken that the team has taken along the corridor to meet with folks. As part of that process, we developed names and information for each of the stakeholders and incorporate that into a database that almost has 1,000 people. There we're able to track all the comments that we received from the website, from email, from conversations. And And then as part of that, we also, as we started developing improvements, we also identified what we call kind of priority stakeholders. And those were stakeholders that were most directly impacted by potential improvements to their property or business. And we reached out directly to them, either meeting with them directly or having phone conversations. We've also wanted to make sure that we broadcast our message broadly and made sure that there was ample opportunity for people to provide input into the study effort. And we did that through hosting a website where you can download all the information and material. This material that you see today will be there. The material that's been presented at past open houses is also available on the website. We've gotten great media coverage, from newspaper articles to TV coverage throughout the course of the project. And we're very pleased with the amount of feedback and information that we've gotten through this process. And that's been really valuable in kind of shaping essentially where we are today. We've incorporated many of the comments into the concepts that Brent is going to be talking and sharing with you now.
Awesome. Thank you, thank you, John, for going through that, the overview. So what I'm going to be talking about is actually the specific project, and this particular webinar, our focus is on the very east end of the corridor. Other webinars you can review at a later time, focus on other sections of the corridor, but this particular one we're focused on the section right really close to US 395 and also a short distance away at Johnson Street. And so there'll be 4 different projects we'll be looking at. Generally the outline is I will show you some background information about it. I will also go through some just historical concepts of when basically we developed some initial concepts, talked to stakeholders, and then came back and revised the concepts based off of the stakeholders. And then we'll show you the final concepts. So the first one I'm going to show you is the section between US 395 to Huntington Street. In this particular section, the real hot spot of safety issues is right there at the intersection of it's the Walgreens and Gold's Gym driveways. You have a lot of congestion with the US 395 intersection, and there's a lot of traffic queues that back up to the west because of that because of a lot of the traffic at that intersection. That conflicts with many turning movements of people trying to access either coming in or out of those driveways, and that is a concern from a safety perspective. So the concepts that we are looking at is trying to really improve this area from a safety perspective of how, what we're wrestling with is how to improve capacity, or how do we improve access to these businesses, as well as improve capacity to this intersection, such that you get a win-win scenario. And so the solution that we came up with involves basically putting a concrete curb down the center of this roadway and restrict the driveway movements from at those driveways. The movements coming out, left turns out and left turns in. Historically, we actually brought this concept and another concept. The other concept involved U-turns and having more of a kind of a U-turn process where people could use U-turns to turn around in the corridor and access some driveways. When we talked to the stakeholders, they did not it was pretty unanimous. They did not like that concept. So we stuck with this particular concept. And in this concept, we keep the full access on the a little bit further to the west of US 395. That is a full access. And to make that work on the north side, it it meant trying to improve a cross-access design, a type of frontage road that local patrons and users can use a local road to get across and to be able to access this full access here. So the original driveways that where all the traffic issues are, they would remain there, but they would be a right-in and right-out only driveways. The other improvements at this intersection, we do show some widening of the corridor through here, adding an additional lane in here. This additional lane would actually be adding a separate turn lane here at this intersection. That would greatly improve the capacity at the signal and reduce the queue length at this intersection. So we're both increasing the capacity of the intersection by adding turn lanes. We're also providing a much longer queuing area for those cars, but we're still providing full access for all the businesses that are in the vicinity of this area. We are also showing some concrete curbing in this section as well, just to, again, improve safety for some of these driveways. But there are, for these landowners, there's alternate access points to get in and out. So this is Concept 101. Also want to point out that we have developed cost estimates for each project. This one is one of the higher cost projects along the corridor. But since it improves many things, safety, capacity, there generally was support from the community, and so it actually ranked pretty high with our technical prioritization. And I will talk about that a little bit later. So this is Project 101. The next project, the next set of projects is at Johnson Street. And Johnson Street is just down the street a little bit to the west. And in this area, there's quite a few driveways, bus stops, local streets. They're all coming together. And at Johnson in particular, it's an offset intersection. Basically, you have a lot of things going on, and because you have a lot of things going on, including bus stops and pedestrians crossing, sometimes in the middle of the roadway, not at intersections, this area is prone to have some safety issues and some safety concerns. So the projects that we are working with at this location are trying to address some of those concerns. The first project, Project 102, is a fairly simple project. The main gist of this project is at Irby. There's some very poor sight distance, basically traffic that is queued here to turn left. They can't see beyond. They have poor sight distance. And one alternative that we put out previously was actually to restrict traffic with some concrete curbing along the median here to not allow people to make those turns to improve safety. However, we heard from the landowners on the north side that would be unacceptable, and based off of their feedback, we actually went with a different alternative of pushing the fence line back to improve the sight distance. So there's actually no restrictions along, turn restrictions along the center of the corridor, no concrete curbing. This project is only moving the fence line further to the south and actually creating a better pedestrian environment. Right now, you just have a sidewalk and a fence line. It's only about 5 feet wide. This would actually improve it to about 9 feet wide and also provide potentially a better spot for a bus stop. So this project provides some better sight distance for people coming out and also a better pedestrian environment. Let's see. The next project is actually just right here at Johnson. Project 103 and 104 are both related. Project 103 is the realignment of the south leg so that it matches much better the north leg. And by realigning, it provides, basically when you have a misalignment, you get turns to and from the main line that can conflict with each other, and by aligning them, it's a much safer environment for those turns to occur. So on this particular project, Project 103, we would realign it. Project 104 is related. We would actually, after it gets realigned, we would actually add a signal. And when we talked to the stakeholders in the area, they actually were excited about a signal in the area for vehicle access and also for better pedestrian crossing, because there are bus stops in this area, and it would provide a safer crossing for pedestrians. But we did keep these as separate projects because 103 could actually happen sooner because it's a lower cost, and then the signal could come later. Alternatively, we are exploring a concept, the option of doing Project 103 short-term with some type of pedestrian crossing, potentially mid-block. And that pedestrian crossing would have things like overheads, signals, rapid flashing beacons, lights that would be pedestrian push button activated to allow for some safer crossing of pedestrians. So that is one alternative if the traffic signal becomes more of a long-term goal for the area. As far as costs, you can see the costs are up here. The first number, $210,000, is Project 103, and then the second one is the cost of adding a signal in. These projects rank 8th and 9th in our rankings. Overall, this slide is meant to just highlight the fact that we looked at many different driveways along the corridor, and there's also many different safety improvements the city would like to happen with improved street lighting in certain sections that are missing it. Also, just some miscellaneous improvements to light, some street traffic signals. Also, there's other places where there might be some pedestrian crossing opportunities. So there's, we've highlighted in our open house discussions many different project emphasis areas, but there's actually some smaller areas, some other projects that would also improve safety along the corridor that are not as focused as far as the geographic area. And then the other thing to bring up with this slide is we have documented many issues with every single access along the corridor, and as we put together the access management plan, or the corridor plan for this area, there will be a database that really highlights what the issues are at each of these access points, and as sites redevelop or change, that would be an opportunity for the city to review the plan and see if some of the safety improvements that are identified in the plan would be appropriate to occur at that time. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is just the project prioritization itself, the technical review that we did to rank these projects. This isn't the final, the ranking. The city will probably look at this ranking, and there may be some tweaks to it of what goes up and what goes down, but from a technical basis, this is how it was ranked. It involves 4 different categories. One is safety, one is operations, one is public support or landowner support, and then one is this overall cost. The safety gets higher scores, mean it had a high crash history, and also the project addresses some safety concerns. From an operations perspective, it got higher scores if it improved overall mainline mobility, meaning better operations for the through traffic, but also it got higher points if it maintained full access for the businesses. So if it was starting to restrict access, it got docked points. From a support basis, you got points for if there was broad support for the project, both from a public perspective and also from an adjacent landowner perspective. And then finally, the higher the cost, the lower the point value. So really trying to get at some cost-effective projects, and by identifying the cost-effective projects, those projects could be built rather quickly. On the left, I am showing several arrows. This is just highlighting the projects that we talked about today in this webinar. Project 4 is the US 395 project. That's the highest ranked project of the ones we talked about. And then there's the group of 3 there at Johnson is a little bit lower in priority. So this provides the overview of all the projects and the prioritization along the corridor. And Lisa will now talk about what's next with the project.
So we will be putting together the access management plan, which is the plan for the whole corridor. And as Brent mentioned, this isn't just a plan to create more safety opportunities within our existing corridor, but also to use as a roadmap for any future development to ensure that it aligns with this access management safety plan. Ryan mentioned early on that phase 2 and 3 will be more of the refinement of these particular projects and continued discussion with the stakeholders that may be affected by those projects that ranked higher in the prioritization list. And we don't anticipate any construction would begin anytime before the spring of 2015. We have a City Council workshop planned for April 22nd, and in order to ensure that we've captured all of the feedback from the series of open houses that we've hosted yesterday and today, we are really hoping that you'll provide us feedback by March 28th, which is the end of this month, so that we can review that feedback and, again, as Brent mentioned, utilize that feedback to finalize our prioritization, our conceptual designs before we make it to the City Council meeting. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Holly, who will facilitate any of the questions that you might have. I also want to just mention that we've appreciated your feedback along the way, and we look forward to hearing from you after this webinar.
Thank you, Lisa. If there are any questions at this time, please go ahead and enter those in the chat section on your menu.